Coming up next on Democracy Does, the Civic Power Playbook.
Get out and vote. I mean, that's the big one. I
Right.
mean, it seems so obvious. And don't just vote in the general election. Regardless of what party you are, your voice has much more impact if you vote in the primary.
That's up next. Welcome to Democracy Does, the Civic Power Playbook, a podcast that cuts through the noise to explain what's really happening in our democracy. Each episode breaks down key issues with insight from policy experts and change makers, giving you clear tips to take action. Whether you're fired up or feeling stuck, you're in the right place to get informed and get inspired, because democracy works best when we all participate. We are very fortunate to have a great guest with us, Dr. David Shein. He is a best-selling author, international speaker. He's a professor, an attorney, an HR consultant and trainer, and as he says, an all-around useful person, which I love. He is a subject expert on political management, and he's the author of several award-winning books, including The Decline of America, 100 Years of Leadership Failure, and Bad Deal for America. And you can find those books on Amazon, and we'll address that at the end of the show too, giving you another plug. But first, Dr. Shein, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
I was intrigued by the titles of your book because when I was reading about you, you clearly have some frustrations about where we are right now with leadership in this country. And I think a lot of us are frustrated. What do you think is one policy, if you could pick one, that is really impacting the American people right now?
Well, I'm not sure if you'd consider it a policy, but my second book is The Bad Deal for America is dedicated to the concept of term limits. And I think that what has happened in Washington, and this is I'm a conservative, but this is a bipartisan concept. We have got a bunch of folks that are running around Washington who are so disconnected from the American people that they do not represent the American people. I don't think we would have a national debt of $37 trillion, which is an unthinkable amount of money, if we were changing out those people on a regular basis and they had to come home and live next door to you and live next door to me. So I think that if I was going to say the one policy that has just a terrible impact on America, it's that these people can stay in Washington. And I'm hopeful that, unfortunately, we have many, many young politicians who run for office and say, when I get in, I'm going to go for term limits and I'm going to personally limit. You know, it's funny, I don't remember a single one of them coming up and saying, you know what, my 10 years is up. Bye, guys, I'm back here. So I think, unfortunately, we are going to have a constitutional change.
You know, there are people who have said that, well, there is something called term limits. It's called elections. You can vote someone
Yes.
out of office. What would you say to that?
Well, I think it's a very valid point, and occasionally people do lose primaries. A specific example is I was politically associated for some years with Congressman Bill Archer. He was chairman of Ways and Means 1995 to 2000, and his replacement in 2000 was a very fine gentleman named John Culberson. And John was elected from a predominantly conservative district here in Houston. And he was coming up on his ninth term in Congress, meaning 18 years. And
Wow.
I was going to suggest to John that I'd like him to not run again. And ironically, he lost that primary. And that doesn't happen very often. But part of it, I think, was there was a change in the demographics in his district. It went more liberal than it had been in the past. Congressman Bill Archer, when he left Congress, went to a very, very high paid position with a major company went to their lobbying operation in Washington, D.C. And so there are certainly opportunities like that. But part of my argument is if we didn't have these people up in Washington for such long periods of time, it would dilute the power of the lobbyists because lobbyists only have to hit a certain number of people. If those people changed out on a regular basis, they would have less equity in who they're dealing with. So it's an old boys club to be blunt about
Yes.
it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you saying that because I think a lot of people on both sides of the aisle have been deeply entrenched, and some people have deep institutional knowledge. They make incredible contributions, and others, it appears that they are coasting. But I do want to ask you about Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. Did you hear about her? She actually proposed an amendment that would strengthen ethics guidelines in Congress so that congressional members had to be held accountable and that the public needed to know what was happening. Um, Basically, again, creating cognitive tests to assess members' abilities to see if they have stayed too long. I don't know if you heard about this. And it got voted down. Nobody
It's
agreed.
unfortunate. There's part of it is that we do have the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, and in my opinion, it should have been utilized on Joe Biden, who clearly had significant cognitive details. And of course, the Comer Commission is investigating that today. And it concerns me.
Really quick to go back to the cognitive decline. Nobody talked about Reagan's cognitive decline and how he was
Yes,
propped up, and he was another one that needed
he
to
was.
been set aside. So I want to emphasize that for people listening. This is a bipartisan issue.
Absolutely. There's certainly indications, and of course goes back to Wilson, who
Yes,
in his
that's right.
last year, reportedly his wife
His wife
ran the
was,
White House as her
yes,
last year in
yeah, which
office.
is just
Yes,
crazy.
it's
But
just crazy. We've already done some outlining on the book administrative, regarding the administrative state, which is going to include, by the way, this horrendous, I'm here in Houston, Texas, which is about 250 miles from the Texas Hill Country, where this horrible, life-taking disaster took place. And there are significant administrative failures.
right,
And people are saying at the federal level, I consider this more a failure at the local and state level, based on, because of course, being here in Houston, I'm getting a lot of direct reports on certain almost where we're flooded with it. It is the headline news here in Houston, and I'm a news junkie, so I don't watch just the national news, but I do
right.
deliberately watch local news. This is an administrative failure, and the governor and the head of the Kerr County don't want to talk about it when the press asks them. They'll be like, "Oh, well, we got to focus on our recovery," and which is, of course, important, but they don't want to talk about why did this happen. And I'm the kind of person, I'm a lot more concerned about why it happened.
Absolutely. I agree. One of the things that is disconcerting, though, was with Doge and Trump was slashing was slashing NOAA and the National Weather Service. And there were a lot of people who were cut. And the National Weather Service, again, under NOAA, they do a lot in terms of forecasting, putting out alerts, making people, communities aware. And yes, there were problems on the local level, but there were also significant cuts in that department. And that means that you don't know how to prepare for disasters. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, severalfold. One of them is that I objected at the beginning of the current administration to do a reduction in force, and this is part of my professional expertise. This is
Mhm.
something I do for companies, because if you go in and you randomly cut employees in a reduction in force, you're liable to end up with a lot of EEOC complaints and things like that.
Right.
So you need to do it intelligently. And
Sure.
so a reduction in force is a planned situation. You make a list of all of your employees by function, and you say who's doing each function. And if you only have one person who does that function, that person's not going to get laid off. They can't choose to
Correct.
be laid off because they're not going anywhere. You've got to have that person, even if they're a three
Correct.
performer. And on the other hand, if you're real deep in another function, then you make a laundry list. Usually you do it, preferred is in order of performance. Many companies do it by seniority, but basically if you have even performance, then you lay off the least senior people. But in any event, you do not just go and say, oh, by the way, anybody who wants to leave, here's a bunch of money, go away. That's stupid because your very best employees are the ones who can get jobs in the private sector, speaking of the public situation. And it's like, who got left? The people who are not competitive and can't get a job in the private sector.
So let me ask you again, I want to make sure that we stay on track in terms of what can the average person do to stay engaged, hopeful, and empowered, because I think people feel very disconnected about what's happening.
Well, first of all, get out and vote. I mean, that's the big one. I mean, it seems so obvious. And don't just vote in the general election. Regardless of what party you are, your voice has much more impact if you vote in the primary. And I think the statistics are about 25–30% of people who vote, and not all Americans vote, unfortunately, but vote in the primaries. And so your vote has much more impact in a primary. And this is, I think, one of the chronic problems in America. I want us to really evaluate what we do as Americans and make sure every American supports themselves and that we make the means available, but that the people still are taken care of. And I don't want people who are unable to take care of themselves to suffer. And that's been brought up a lot lately.
Exactly. One other suggestion that you would recommend to people to feel empowered who feel hopeless, right?
Sure. Don't ignore things that seem passing. One of the things that's happened over the last couple of years that got a lot of publicity, of course, is parents showing up at school board meetings. And that is a real root involvement. And I'm so happy to see that. I really like a incredibly effective public school system.
Great.
And I think part of the failure of the United States, if you will, recently has been that we have really fallen down on our public schools. And I don't think the answer is to go to parochial schools or to homeschooling. I think it's parents need to get involved and say, let's really focus on the 3 R's. As a college professor, I can tell you, I'm getting people in graduate school, because I teach in MBA and master's programs, who have never written a research paper. I was writing research papers in my junior year of high school.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew how to do footnotes and type of paper and things.
Agreed.
We have got to get back to basics. And I think it helps your entire society when you have a better public school system.
Okay. So invest in education.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Dr. Shein, thank you so much. Where can people learn more about you?
Well, my consulting firm is ClaremontManagementGroup.com. And we're on the web, obviously. And then, as you mentioned, both of my books are up on Amazon, and I'm always working on new books.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shein, for being here with us. And now it's time for Power Plays, tips from Dr. Shein. Number 1, vote. Pure and simple. Get informed about your local, state, and federal races and make your voice heard. Also, invest in education. An informed community is a stronger one. And don't forget, you can find Dr. Shein's books, Bad Deal for America, as well as The Decline of America, 100 Years of Leadership Failures, on Amazon, and we'll have the description and links below. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you're feeling a little more hopeful, a little less stuck, and maybe even inspired to take action, because democracy does work when we all participate. And don't forget, sign up for our newsletter to get updates on when our next episode drops. You can go to my website, democracydoes.com. And as a bonus, if you haven't gotten one, a free and easy tip sheet on how to get involved. Until next time, I'm your host, Robin Hamilton.